This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of H.E Investment Group, your host of Tonight with Frank Islam. Today we are fortunate to have a guest, Rizwan Saeed Sheikh. He's a DCM from Embassy of Pakistan. We're fortunate to have him. He's a great leader for our community, for this nation, and represents well from Pakistan. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Ambassador and So tell me a little bit about yourself and what kind of role do you play? And then I want to ask you questions, your role of embassy in Pakistan.
Well, I am a career diplomat from the Foreign Service of Pakistan with almost 2.5 decades of experience. I'm into my 25th year of service.
Oh my gosh.
So I have been around to a number of stations and postings. Previously, I started with Turkey, then the Pakistan's mission to the United Nations in Geneva. Then I was also outside government for a while as spokesman of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the
OIC.
OIC.
Right.
So then
that was in Jeddah.
That was based in Jeddah, but I was a spokesman, so it was mainly a marketing exercise. Marketing OIC positions to the West and dialogue with the West, etc. And then I find myself here in this position, which is the Deputy Chief of Mission.
And you have been here for how long?
It's been about 2 years.
Oh, well, so you've been here for a while.
I have been here for a while. And it's,
so what's your role at the embassy?
Well, in a traditional sense, a conventional sense, DCM is into everything. Basically at the embassy, coordinating all sorts of wings on behalf of the ambassador. In a light vein, they say that it's a responsible post because if anything goes wrong, I'll be held responsible. So that's how it is. Maybe that explains. But into all coordination, the political side of things, the security side of things, the economic wing, the commercial wing, the press information.
Mm-hmm. They all go through you.
Yes.
So you sort of a chief operating officer to run day-to-day operation for the embassy.
In a way, yeah. I'll not dispute that. Yeah.
That's the kind of, and I know you have done a great job, and you do continue to engage the Pakistani community over here. So the people who are watching the show, they will say, well, we got a DCM, we got an ambassador. How do you differentiate the roles between the two positions? You explained to me very well what your job, your chief operating officer. What else do you do that ambassador does not do, but you tend to do that? You have responsibility to do that?
Well, ambassador at times cannot attend to so many things because Washington, for instance, is a big setup for any country, not only for Pakistan. Most countries have their large setups, large communities here in United States, and there's too much to do. So that's why it is normally like having two ambassadors, one senior, one junior. A senior person to accompany ambassador to the post and perform tasks where ambassador cannot really attend.
And as a matter of fact, you're going to United Nations tomorrow, so you'll be talking to the foreign ministers who's coming from Pakistan?
Yes, there would be.
So that's the additional responsibility that you have on your shoulder. To welcome the people that
coming from Pakistan, to accompany delegations that are there from Pakistan, to basically accompany even private sector people who are here from Pakistan last month, for instance.
So to promote the trade and commerce, investment in this nation.
Yes, and to stand in for ambassador when he is not there. That's also as CDA, they call it, the Charge Affairs, in the absence of ambassador, if he has to go back home for consultations, etc.
Then you're there to officiate, to be an ambassador, to represent Pakistan. That's very nice. One of the important aspects, in addition to all the responsibilities and role that you have, and you're doing a good job, and you've done a great job, and continue to nurture and nourish the relationship with the community. So, and I know you do a lot of events also at your embassy to reach out to the community. So my question to you is, how do you reach out to the community? And not just the Pakistani community, but the community in general, in broader sense, maybe American community as well, and especially the people who come from a socially, economically disadvantaged background from Pakistan. So how do you reach out to them?
Well, there are a number of channels available and even being made available to reach out to the communities. As you mentioned, that we have a number of events.
Yes, you do.
A busy calendar, and it's getting busier since the arrival of the current ambassador in particular, because he has been going around meeting people in the length and breadth of United States.
Not just in this area, but you reach out to the wider audience, which means all over the country.
The wider audience, the think tanks, not only based here but elsewhere in the United States, the academia that we have elsewhere in the United States, not just again restricted to the capital territory or the tri-state area. Then we have to be part of a number of economic and commercial activities that takes place between the two countries. For instance, we have a reasonable frequency of business delegations
coming from
Pakistan,
promote
yes,
investment, trade,
going
commerce.
to Pakistan, coming from Pakistan,
from here.
going
Is it
to
both ways?
Pakistan.
Is it both ways? Okay.
So you have to be part of that traffic as well. And then there is a deliberate and conscious effort on the part of the embassy to try and reach out to the different segments of Pakistani community, as you have mentioned yourself, that we try and interact through different events.
So you could have Eid, you could have also celebration for the Muharram, which is the Shia.
Yes.
You could also celebration for the Christian people from Christian faith or Hindu faith. So am I correct to assume that you do those?
We are having those. We only last week we had a celebration on Eid Miladun-Nabi at the embassy. That was for people of certainly Muslim faith.
Yes.
For the last 2 years since I've been here, we have been regularly providing our venue, that is the embassy premises, for holding Easter and Christmas events to the Pakistani Christian community.
Very well.
And the next one is due to be held end of this month on 29th of December. So that is where the embassy, engages different segments of Pakistani society and Pakistani diaspora here. Not to be able to interact with them only, but to be able to know their issues and
the challenges they have.
See how best we can assist
Help
to
them.
solve.
As you know, the diaspora community plays a very important role in engaging the host countries, and also there could be if you galvanize them, their resources, they could be crucial for you to not only to engage them and engage the American community, and also to help the Pakistan in terms of investment, and also be your ambassador.
Certainly, that is what we tell them when we reach out to them. There are a few key messages that we have been consistently passing on to the community in all the reach out exercises that we have. For instance, the first key message is that while Pakistan is basically their land of heritage or motherland, this is
their adopted land.
This is their country of residence.
That is so true.
They are Americans for all practical purposes.
Yes.
So as much as they invest themselves politically, physically, financially in this country and become part of the American ethos, the American culture, the American polity,
part of the social, economic, political fabric of this nation.
They are going to indirectly improve the image of Pakistan in this country.
Very well said.
And in a more practical and direct sense, they form the bridge between United States and Pakistan, because through the investment channels, through exchanges of delegations on cultural, political, social issues.
All of the above.
All of the above. They are going to be the best ambassadors of Pakistan, because we in the Foreign Service have tenures. We come and go. But those are permanently stationed ambassadors here.
They will be here.
They will be here.
So when we come back, we want to talk about, I know you are fond of poetry, so I want to have you decide maybe Allama Iqbal or maybe Faiz Ahmad Faiz, maybe Sahil Udhiwani, a couplet if you can. And then I will talk a little bit about, do you have statistics of the Pakistani American community, and how do you go out in terms of reaching out? So we'll be back. We'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you for watching.
SAI Mortgage is key for you.
अपना घर खरीदने और रीफाइनेंस करवाने के लिए SAI Mortgage से राब्ता करें.
Don't make a move without SAI.
We're now back. We are interviewing, or we're talking with, having a conversation, if in a sense, with the DCM from the Embassy Pakistani Rizwan Saeed Sheikh. Thank you very much for being here. So, as I mentioned before the break, that I want you to recite some of the couplet from Faiz Ahmad Faiz or Allama Iqbal or Sahil Udwani or Ghalib. Could be all of them. So you have someone that some couplet from them?
Well, poetry has been a passion that I had followed since the student life. So I'll try and give you a sampling as much as my memory helps me from recollection of each of these poets, these great poets that you have mentioned. Starting with Allama Iqbal. I think the one I like best is Amal se zindagi banti hai, jannat bhi, jahannam bhi, ye khaki apni fitrat mein na noori hai, na nari hai. Then moving on to Faiz, let me recite a couplet.
Faiz was born in India, but he went to Pakistan, correct?
Yes, yeah. He's one of the great poets.
He was.
Let me recall. हम तो मजबूर वफ़ा हैं मगर ए जाने जहाँ अपने उशाक़ से ऐसा भी कोई करता है तेरी महफ़िल को खुदा रखे अबद तक कायम हम तो मेहमा हैं घड़ी भर के हमारा क्या है. Ghalib, of course, I mean too much to talk about, but just a sampling is, and that particularly strikes me and has always struck me as amongst his poetry is Ibn Maryam hua kare koi, mere dukh ki dawa kare koi. And Sahir, you have again mentioned, a great poet.
He was also one of the best lyrics of his time. Yeah.
Of his time. Chand kaliyan nishat ki chunkar मुद्दतों महवे यास रहता हूँ तेरा मिलना खुशी की बात सही तुझसे मिलकर उदास रहता हूँ.
Wow, thank you very much for reciting such a wonderful
thank you very much. You reminded me of the good old times.
Right. So I don't know much about the poetry, which is a wonderful in Urdu poetry, because I am from Aligarh, and only thing I know is about Majaz Lakhnavi. So going back to the questions that before the break I asked you, what are the challenges and opportunities do you think that the Pakistani American community have here in the United States?
The challenges are multiple. For instance, there used to be a better flow of Pakistanis into America. That has subsided over the past 4 to 5 years. Because of problems that are there, perhaps with visas, etc. For instance, students and doctors used to flow in a big number.
So how many students come to the United States every
Currently,
year?
it's a very small number compared to the peak that we had in late 80s and 90s. I think around 5 to 10,000 students. Very small number compared to the size of a country which has just overtaken Brazil as the 6th largest country. Now we are the 5th. In terms of the current census that we had in Pakistan earlier this year, we have overtaken Brazil, and we are around over 210 million people.
Which is a fairly large population. What is the population in Pakistan in terms of the people who are younger generations, these people who go to school?
The people who go to school are, of course, in a big number, but in terms of the standards that are applied.
I'm talking about millennium, between
yes,
20 and 35.
I think
Which I understand is a very large population.
Very large population. In terms of the standard that is generally applied, which is under 30,
yes.
Over 60% of our population. So we have a youth bulge. But even the subset that you have mentioned, I think easily 50% of that would be in that
hope for tomorrow. And it is our responsibility and your responsibility, our responsibility, the people who are watching the show in Pakistani American community, to help them to go to school, to give them financial resources, because if they have the hardship to go to school, and help them to bring to America and creating the next generations of the Pakistani American, and they can all be proud of. So I wanted to shift a little bit of focus to talk about, and there's a lot of talk about in terms of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. As a result of that, there's a little bit of distant relationship with in India, as well as they may think it's a threat. I do not really know. That's something I want you to shed some light, and with the United States as well. So can you tell us a little bit of what this all about and what it will accomplish, and how is it going to reignite and retransform Pakistan?
Well, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a major investment, project, the largest in the history of Pakistan, the largest in the history of that region, and perhaps the largest ever, because it continues to grow as we speak. It started with $46 billion. Now we are talking about the project being to the tune of $62 billion. And it is a project of essentially energy infrastructure investment. And then once the corridor is complete, along that corridor there would be economic zones that would be built. So it is essentially a connectivity project connecting the part of China which was underdeveloped through Pakistan to the rest of the world, and in itself also it is a very tiny part of the Belt Road Initiative of China, which encompasses more than that, far more than that. Actually, it encompasses like 67 plus countries in its fold. So it is a connectivity project that is likely to induce economic activity and bring economic development and growth from wherever it passes that corridor.
And what it passes beside Afghanistan as well as Pakistan?
It basically
it comes from China, correct?
It comes from China, Kashgar,
right?
And then it is kind of a north-south corridor crossing the entire length of Pakistan, and it would be also having branches which would join the corridor from say the east and the west. And then once the energy and the infrastructure projects are completed, which would be sometime next year, there is going to be a lot of economic activity that is going to flow in the region. And a project which brings economic activity, a project which brings well-being, cannot be a threat to anyone. It is rather an incentive, an invitation for other people to join rather than.
And how did how other countries come and join this corridor?
Well, for instance, once even at this stage, when it is yet to be completed, the corridor or the infrastructure part of it, we are receiving official offers from countries like UK, Korea, Turkey, to become part of the investment that is taking place there. It is already there. And corporate America, for instance, is moving in a big way. Already the infrastructure projects or the energy projects that we have as part of the corridor, energy in particular, most of the engines that are being used in energy projects are GE provided. So American company. And corporate America is realizing the opportunity that if China being
they see the benefits.
They see the benefits, because China being a most business savvy nation, if they are investing something to the tune of $62 billion in a place, there is naturally something that they see in return. It is not just for the sake of friendship that is there. They see the economic dividends of such a project, and it is open for other countries to join.
It's a win-win situation for everyone.
It's a win-win situation, and hopefully, if it all goes well, it will not only serve Pakistan and China, it will serve broader South Asian region.
Which is important. So when we come back, I want to talk about the two important topics that I have in mind: U.S.-Pakistan relationship, and also India and Pakistan. As you know, they're neighbors, and it's important for them to have the peace, and so it is in India's interest and Pakistan's interest to make sure they can live in peace, and also it is in their interest to make sure there is a good engagement relationship between the two nations. I wanted you to shed some light on that. We'll be right back, and thank you.
S.A.I. mortgage is key for you.
अपना घर खरीदने और रीफाइनेंस करवाने के लिए SAI मॉर्गेज से राब्ता करें.
Don't make a move without SCI.
We are back. So thank you very much, Mr. Ambassadors. And I want to go back to the two questions that we asked. I think it's in the interest of the India and Pakistan to have a good relationship between the two neighbors. So I want you to shed some light on that, where we are, what's going on, and how do we continue to work with them. They are your neighbor.
Well, first let me start by endorsing what you have said, that peace is important for both countries, because we are talking about no less than 1/5 of the humanity.
That's a fairly large.
Very large chunk of people on this planet.
And they shared the heritage and history, the background and belief.
Yes.
They were together before 1947.
Before the partition took place, we were colonized together by the Britishers for an extended period of time. And since over the past 7 decades since partition, there have been ups and downs. There have been the disputes that linger on for the past 7 decades, Kashmir being one of them, as being the core issue and the main bone of contention between
It has been going on since the partition 1947.
Yes, it is basically an unfinished agenda of
that's the best way to describe it.
It is an unfinished agenda that perhaps needs to be addressed as being the core issue between two countries, which is certainly going to lead to a situation where dividends of peace will certainly flow for 1/5 of humanity, as we have discussed. Lately, the situation is actually, to say the least, not good, because India and Pakistan are not talking to each other. How can you even expect peace if there is not even a dialogue going on? Pakistan has all along been for normalization of relations with India. It has been a stated policy of, and a consistent stated policy of a succession of our leaders, presidents, prime ministers at the highest level. Lately, the situation is that India is placing certain preconditions of on dialogue, whereas Pakistan is ready for an unconditional engagement. There are issues between two countries, as I have mentioned Kashmir. From the Indian side, they say that terrorism is an issue that needs to be discussed, and Pakistan has its own view of terrorism, because we are the worst victim of terrorism.
You are the victims of terrorism.
As much as, or as actually more than any other country in the world. And we also have our own problems with terrorism emanating from the Indian side. We are actually in custody of Kulbhushan Yadav, an Indian serviceman who is there and has all kinds of confessional statements regarding a ring that he was running to destabilize Balochistan in particular, and Karachi and other parts of the country in general.
Have to set aside the differences.
Certainly, that's what we are saying.
And move forward.
That's what
because it is
that is what
important.
I'm coming to. That there are problems,
some
there
challenges.
There are challenges. There are cribs on both sides. But those do not stand a chance of a solution until the two countries come together, sit across a table, place everything on that table, and start discussing that.
Start having a dialogue,
Start having
and discourse.
a dialogue. And we believe that given the urgency, given the necessity of having a peaceful neighborhood for the benefit of such a large amount of people in South Asia, I am optimistic, at least, that the two sides will sit together sooner than later. Our Indian friends will see the light of the day. They will come to the table without preconditions and will engage in a sustained dialogue, because each time the dialogue breaks, the very people that we are both challenged by as nation states, the terrorists, stand to benefit.
That is true.
Their narrative stands to benefit.
So it's really not the government-to-government engagement. It has to be people-to-people relationship as well.
There is people-to-people engagement that has been continuing in the worst of times. It continues even to date as we speak. There are exchanges of delegations at the level of experts, like jurists, like journalists. There are even associations that have been formed between two countries that continue to perform their activities through exchanges of delegations, etc. They actually have a fairly busy calendar of that sort. Okay. But more important, it is for governments to sit together and reach the formal points of agreement, which can usher in an era of prosperity.
So you do see a brighter horizon, even when you endure a storm. There have been some storms.
As a diplomat, as my profession is all about optimism.
So let's just talk about the U.S. in Pakistan relationship. That's a very important part of what you're doing and what you have to do. where we are in terms of this administration's policy towards Pakistan, and what do you think, where you headed?
Well, US-Pakistan relationship again is basically very well entrenched in history. I mean, as actually the whole history of Pakistan as an independent nation state, because it started at the outset of our independent existence as Pakistan emerged on the world map. President Truman addressed a letter to the founder of Pakistani nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and since that we have had ups and downs, but it is actually one of the most resilient relationships, bilateral relationships in the world, because it has actually survived not one, not two, but multiple tests of times.
And it has been a bipartisan in a sense, right?
It has been
whether it's the Republican administrations or the Democrats.
Currently, in the current phase of Pak-US bilateral relations, there is a slight downslide. It is, but we have overcome even greater challenges in the past. The important thing is that the two sides realize the importance of this bilateral relationship. We have had recently, since the Trump administration has been in the seat, particularly in the last 4 months or so, starting from the announcement of President Trump's South Asia policy and leading up to the first significant high-level contact between Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi and Vice President Mike Pence on the sidelines.
I think the meeting just took place not too long ago, right?
Yes, 3 months on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session in New York. And since then, there have been at least 2 high-level visits from the United States to Pakistan, Secretary Tillerson followed by Secretary Mattis, which was just about two weeks back. And there is an incremental trust building that we think is fairly encouraging, and the two sides are understanding each other's perspective better, because the main source of engagement in the relationship is Afghanistan these days.
So tell me a little bit about Afghanistan. Do you think Afghanistan and India is tilting towards each other rather than and bypassing Pakistan? But Afghanistan needs Pakistan in order to build the peace in that part of the region.
Afghanistan and Pakistan are basically neighbors.
Of course.
And you cannot ignore the significance, the importance of neighbors anywhere in the world. And Pakistan has suffered greatly because of instability, extended instability in Afghanistan over the past 4 decades. Each time there is instability, it flows through a fairly long porous border into Pakistan. The important thing is that both Pakistan and Afghanistan and the leadership of the two countries realize that there is no wishing away, of its neighbors, but we need to build the trust that would not only guarantee a structured, constructive engagement to overcome the differences that we may have on different issues of engagement that form part of the bilateral relationship of the two countries, but also to, without wasting much time, sit together and try and address those issues one by one, the issues of border management that we have, the issues of refugees that Pakistan has hosted over the past 4 decades. I think this is the longest stay of any refugee population in the history of the world, at least the known history of the world. Pakistan is not a rich country, but we have been bearing
the brunt of that.
The brunt and the burden of that speaks of the hospitality that forms part of our culture. I mean, they are our brethren as people. We have centuries of living together, so we are honoring that history as a nation, and will continue to honor that. But these are also becoming issues that have to be addressed sooner than later between the two countries. And Pak-US relationship, in Pak-US relationship, as you mentioned earlier, Afghanistan is one issue where we have differences, but there is a commonality, identity of views on a multifaceted set of issues. The relationship is multifaceted. There is agreement on both sides in principle to continue to let it expand into other areas. commerce and trade and economic interests, for instance, form a real important part of it, and that has been clearly expressed by the recent visitors to Pakistan, Secretary Tillerson and Secretary Mattis in particular, that we want to expand the scope of the relationship and have it on a more concrete, a stronger footing, and no better, no concrete, no stronger footing for any bilateral relationship than having commercial and economic ties and linkages. So there is a big focus there. The last highest summit level exchange that we had between two countries was between our former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and President Obama in the previous administration, and the joint communique that came out of that meeting clearly spelled out the need for people-to-people contact, which basically, as I mentioned, that economic linkages is an important exponent of it. So enhancing people-to-people linkages to forge a multifaceted relationship that is going to continue to the benefit of people of both countries. And there Pakistani diaspora plays a very
important role. There's no question.
As we have discussed.
So thank you very much, and we'll be right back.
SAI mortgage is key for you.
अपना घर खरीदने और रीफाइनेंस करवाने के लिए SAI मॉर्गेज से राब्ता करें।
Don't make
So we are back. We're having a wonderful conversation with the DCM, Rizwan Saeed Sheikh. Thank you very much again for your wonderful thoughts, and very constructive and very thoughtful. So, as an Indian American, I feel strongly that there is a need for the Pakistani diaspora community to engage, because Indian diaspora has done a good job in engaging not only the community, but engaging the political part of that, which is Senate and the House and the administrations, and U.S. deal, U.S.-India nuclear deal was the best example. So my question to you is, what's your thought on this, and can you tell the audience, the Pakistani American which are listening to you, is what can they do to help you to do your job?
Well, Pakistani American diaspora, Pakistani American community is, according to even the most conservative estimates, 1.5 million plus
That's a
in
fairly
strength.
large.
That's a pretty large community to have, and we as the Embassy of Pakistan consider them an asset. We consider them an asset for building bridges between the two countries, forging the bilateral relationship on a very concrete footing, as I was mentioning in the previous segment, that there is this realization and resolve on both sides, Pakistan and the United States, to forge a people-to-people contact relationship, a people-centered relationship, and there the Pakistani diaspora can play a very important role. My message in particular is for the youth segment of Pakistani American community, because the first generation people, they have played their innings more or less in the United States. They can guide the youth, but the action lies on the part of the youth, is to identify with their roots. I remember in the last elections in the United States, Bernie Sanders was a candidate that was identified with his Polish roots, despite the fact that his descendants had migrated from Poland over 200 years ago. So it is, America is a melting pot of cultures and different nationalities from all around the world, and it is good to have a collective voice for those nationalities and retain their independent identities while being a part of the American culture. My message to the youth is, please take part in American polity, in American economy. Invest yourselves fully into the culture, the social, economic moorings of this society, because by doing that, you will not only be improving the image of Pakistan, but you will be able to be in a position where you can play a more constructive, a more meaningful role in building bridges between the two countries that we have already cited. And most important in this regard is to have a political role in your communities, engage with your congressmen, engage with your senators, and discuss issues of significance in the bilateral relationship of the two countries. That would in itself be the most concrete underwriting of a strong, sustained bilateral relationship between Pakistan and the United States.
Very well said, Mr. Ambassador. You mentioned about the immigrations. We are a nation of immigrants, and Bernie Sanders is a good example. President Kennedy said it very well when he wrote a book called A Nation of Immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants. We came from somewhere else. And the immigrations and immigrants are the natural resources for this nation, and they allow us to explore the new frontier and keeping the hope alive. They're very well said. So my question to you is to the people who are business people. There are a lot of Pakistani American in this country. They're fairly well off. They're wealthy. So my question to you: they're entrepreneurs, they're business people, they're doctors, they're engineers, and they're top notch. They have served our community, our country very, very well. What is the message to them to invest in Pakistan and to make sure to help the people in Pakistan, not just education, but creating the next generation of entrepreneurs, leaders, innovators, and creators?
Well, there are some Pakistani organizations of Pakistani diaspora in the length and breadth of United States that are already working in this area. But there is a lot that can be done and that needs to be done by Pakistani businessmen, Pakistani entrepreneurs, Pakistani professionals that are there, lawyers, doctors, etc., to help a collective identity of Pakistani community in the United States and help form a collective voice of Pakistani community in the United States. Most importantly, it is going to serve the subsequent generations of Pakistani in the United States as well as people back home in Pakistan. In the areas like education, there is the Citizens Foundation that is playing a major role in expanding the scope of education in Pakistan. There are Pakistani doctors which keep going back home. They are having even next week a major convention in Pakistan which is going to look at the avenues of further engagement between two countries in this important area. There is an organization of Pakistani entrepreneurs in North America, Open it is called, right, which is doing great. They have actually 11 chapters in the length and breadth of United States, and they are bringing people on different fora, not only to exchange experiences but to even explore opportunities, as we have talked about, in how to further strengthen the bonds of economic, commercial and social linkages between the people of the two countries. But the size of this diaspora is so large that there is still a gap between what has been achieved and the potential that exists.
So they can have a strong impact, influence in building not only the United States but also helping build Pakistan. And I think you said it very well.
Certainly. And now that Pakistan is ready for takeoff with CPAC being completed next year, and there is an international attention, as I mentioned, other countries in the world are officially requesting to form part of investment and trade opportunities that Pakistan offers. I think it is the right time for the Pakistani American diaspora also to jump in, take advantage of the situation. Recently, USAID is engaged in an exercise of mapping Pakistani diaspora, the well-to-do people in Pakistani diaspora across the United States. The results of that survey should be out in the first quarter of next year, and that is going to be a major database that would serve both countries in looking at how to best utilize it, to optimally utilize it towards enhancing and strengthening bonds of friendship between our two countries.
That's very well said. You strengthen, broaden, and deepen the engagement. So thank you very much for coming here, and thank you for serving not only the United States but also serving your own country and community. And thank you for being a role model for the people who are watching the show and also for the younger generation. Do you have any last words to say before we depart in our conversation?
My last word is that Pakistan is a nation of friends. We bring friendship to the United States, we offer friendship to the United States, and we want this friendship to be lasting and sustained.
Very well said, very well said. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FY Investment Group, wishing you a great week, and thank you for watching.